Hello, and welcome to Leadership is Philosophy, Not a Checklist, book discussion 15. This is just a real quick intro because I did the video and it was too long, so I'm cutting it into two sections. So this is just an intro into the first section. This section is going to be about 22, 23 minutes long, and then there'll be a part two. So hang in there. Hopefully you find it interesting. This is a great book on leadership, and so there was a lot in it. And that's the reason that I went too long, because I was trying to be as concise as possible. So thanks so much, and enjoy part one. Now, as you can tell from the right over here, Emory S. Bogardus was a sociologist at the University of Southern California. I went to do some research and didn't find a whole lot about him. I found his Wikipedia page, which was woefully inadequate because it did not have this book listed under his publications. So I thought that was kind of fun. This review or this discussion is going to be kind of different because I found out about this book while I was doing research for my Army leadership stuff, the Army leadership manuals. In the 1948 version, it said, go read this book when you go to write the other manuals. There's a couple others that were on that list that I'm going to do as well. But this is from let me scroll down real quick. This is from 1934. So some of the stuff that they talk about is fascinating because it's very similar to what I'm talking about now, which I hope reinforces the point that a whole bunch of these ideas are not mine. They're the same ideas that have been around for a long time. We're just not paying attention to them. What I'm going to try to do, this is the fourth time I've tried this video, is this is actually just a picture of a PDF, so I can't do like other ones where I skip to certain lines. So I have to skip around to a bunch of different pages. So the video is going to have a bunch of pauses in it, and I apologize for that, but I think it's better than watching me scroll and type in stuff. I'm going to do that a little bit when things are close, but when I'm trying to get centered on the right piece of text, that's what I'm trying to do. So don't think that I'm just trying to make it as digestible as possible. Like I said, I am going to do it real quick. So that's it. So we're going to get right into it. So let's go to page 6. So here's the preface, and I just really enjoy the way this is written. I'm going to read it out loud, even though you that are watching the video can see it. So leadership is an interesting social phenomenon which challenges the student of sociology at every turn. To some degree, it is present wherever human beings are gathered together. Right? Sure. It is also a baffling phenomenon that careful examination of it has been long postponed. True. So 100 years ago, he was saying the same thing, that we're there still, right? Because we still haven't done a good analysis. Studies of personality and of social processes are, however, reaching the point where leadership can be examined with the hope of making discoveries as to its origins and underlying principles. So this, he says, then he goes on and talks about what the book is doing. Then he says he's got two major sets of observation. One is the origins of leadership, and the others is the principles of leadership. The origins, which have been located in 3 human centers, heredity, social stimuli, and particularly personality traits, are illustrated by new and fresh materials. We're going to discuss that. And then there's also some biographical evidence that he talks about, and he thanks everybody for helping. Wonderful. Now I'm going to show you some of the topics. So first is what's leadership, what type of leaders. Now pay no attention to these pages because they don't match the picture. That's why I've got notes with skipping around and all that sort of stuff. But what's interesting is they've got types of leaders in here. Once again, we've discussed that, yes, this leadership type might exist, but they have to exist all the time. You have to be able to be a different type of leader in different situations. And then it's origins and heredity. So they've got genes and endocrines, which this one confused me, and I wasn't sure that it made a salient point. But one thing I do love about this book, and it's free, you can get it in PDF form. When my website launches, it's going to be on my website, but this is free. It's a PDF. Is at the end of each one of these chapters, it has a bunch of discussion questions. I'll show you an example. And then origins and social stimuli, so it's opportunity, blah, blah, blah. And then we've got origins and personality. So what's amazing, right? All of my theory and all this was done. I found this book, I don't know, several months ago. But look, we've got energy, intelligence, character, tact and humor, forecast of the future, which is vigilance, right? So those characteristics were being talked about in this book. I just thought it was amazing. And then it talks about all these other concepts, flashes of insight, balance, integration. So, like I said, I'm going to skip around from different chapters. You'll be able to see the page number in some cases. So that's the beginning thing. So let's get right into the first chapter. So this one's interesting. Talks about leadership bears vital relationship to individuality and its complementary element, sociality. If individuality refers to those distinguishing traits which set one person off from another, then sociology is composed of those behavior traits which identify one person with another. So then it goes on and talks about how a leader is able to engage differently because they're able to be social. And then has this idea here, which is leadership traits, sociality, individuality, followership traits. Great. But what's interesting about this, if you look at this, this is a neat little chart, but it looks like 20% of people have leadership traits. And this is something, once again, that was done, 85 years ago, whatever. And so I just thought this chart was fascinating that the guy's talking about it that way. All right, I'm going to skip ahead, so just going to pause for a second. Pay no attention to the break in the flow. Okay, we're back. So this is still in the chapter on leadership. I just thought this was fascinating because this is something that we've talked about with traits and characteristics. Not mine, they're just there. So another method of studying leadership is represented by judgment and evaluative techniques. In a women's college, the juniors and seniors were asked to select from the entire student body of over 1,800 3 students whose leadership they would voluntarily follow, or they would follow most willingly. I apologize. Remember I said that line in, 10 videos ago or something. I said, a leader, who would you voluntarily follow somewhere else? In other words, if they packed up and said, I'm going to another state and I want you to come work for me, would you voluntarily follow that person for no other reason other than they asked? So here's the same question 85 years ago. And then they were also asked to list the characteristics which seem to explain the leadership ability. From this study in attitudes and opinions concerning leaders, they got democratic attitudes, vitality, positiveness, friendliness, enthusiasm, sympathy, trustworthiness, and perseverance were the most outstanding traits of women who ranked the highest as leaders. On the other hand, the traits appearing at the opposite personality pole, that is, those which may be said to prevent leadership, included indifference, narrowness, timidity, affectation, egotism, silliness, fecklessness, and stubbornness. So here's your chart. But what is this? Democratic attitudes. Okay, so humility, right? Vitality, that's just being positive, being energetic. Friendliness, enthusiasm, positive energy. Sympathy, empathy. Trustworthiness, and perseverance. So what's in trustworthiness? Integrity. So here we are. We got integrity, we got humility, we got empathy. What they don't have necessarily is vigilance, although perseverance could be vigilance. And then here's the anti-leadership traits. There it is, right? Where here does it say has the right certificate? Where does it say has the right training? Nothing. These are characteristics that we look for in people that are leaders. So I love that table. And then I had something on the next page. Let me pause again. Okay, and so this one I thought was great because I think I talked about it in the initial scenario, my initial hypothesis where I talked about why leaders don't write books. So it says here, study of leadership may be pursued through the analysis of biographies, autobiographies, and life histories. A great deal may be expected of the case analysis method. Much of the material in this volume has been secured in this way, and hence the strong and weak points of this method may be presented succinctly. So then it says here, biographies and autobiographies focus on the person, not the leader and the led. And then says, this is what we need. This is the sort of leadership books that we need from 1934. Is the life history, but the life history so far have usually been gathered with the view of studying the nature of personal and social disorganization. Whoops, I skipped something. I'm sorry. This is the line that I was talking about. I'm pointing and you can't see it. Here. A new kind of autobiography is needed, one that will present the social situation, the social process, and the attitudes of all concerned. So then you're able to say, well, here's the scenario and here's what the leader did. And some of the books that I reviewed show that, where they're talking about, here was the situation, here's what was going on, here's what we did. And that's how you learn from the scenario, because what have we said a million times? The scenario changes frequently. The scenario is always changing, right? All of the conditions are changing. So I just thought that was a very interesting point. Okay, one more pause. Okay, so types of leaders, chapter 2. This was interesting because right here, see this the way this PDF worked, it's a mess. It's just a picture, so it does funky stuff. Anyway, it says, if you were to gather all the leaders of the world together at a particular moment, they would find that judging by the nature of their leadership, they might all be classified as direct, indirect, partisan, scientific, social, executive, mental, autocratic, paternalistic, or democratic, or as specialists in leadership such as the prophet, the saint, the expert, and the boss. Or all of them, right? The only thing that happens is he doesn't distinguish, and I think I'm going to talk about it later, when he talks about specialists and being a scientific type of leader. He talks about people being at the charge of or at the top of a competence hierarchy as being a leader. But again, we've talked about the difference between people leader and being the top of the competence hierarchy. Being the best at a skill is the leader in that skill. It doesn't mean that you're a leader of people. Anyway, this whole entire chapter goes on to talk about back and forth about the two different, the pros and the cons of each one of these. But as I've said, and it even talks about it down here, it says not only does the personality of every leader consist of both partisan and scientific, and then he basically goes through to say that all of these people shade towards different versions of this type of leadership at different times, which I just thought was funny because it starts off saying this is absolutely it. Anyway, interesting. I thought it was an interesting point. All right, so this next section talks about, so the chapters that we skipped over were the Heredity chapter, because basically it says people think there's heredity, but there's no evidence for it. And then the endocrine thing, which was talking about people with a good diet have a better constitution and can lead better. I'm not an expert in any of that stuff, and so watching that without a bunch of reading that without a bunch of scientific references, I didn't think was germane for me to comment on, I guess. But this chapter talks about having an influence, or having a mentor, or having somebody in charge. So several pages before this are different examples about fathers and mothers being good influences on their kids. But this one I just love because I did a book review on Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington, and he talks about Mrs. Ruffner, who was at a hotel that he was working at. And she was a taskmaster, but she held everybody to a high standard, and as long as he did his job, then she was fine. If you were doing your work, you got taken care of. But this is what's great. It said, I began to learn, first of all, that she wanted everything kept clean about her, and she wanted things done promptly and systematically. And that at the bottom of everything, she wanted honesty and frankness. So she wanted integrity. Nothing must be slovenly or slipshod. Every door, every fence must be kept in repair. Even to this day, so her influence on Booker T. Washington was unbelievable. So the rest of his life, he was doing that. But then he had General Armstrong, who got a hold of him and put him in at the Hampton Institute. and he talks about what an amazing example General Armstrong was. I'm trying to find a good reference because it would be neat if somebody has done a bunch of research on General Armstrong, because it seems to me if I think that Booker T. Washington was a natural leader and Armstrong identified him, then Armstrong must have been a natural leader too. Difficult to find a good book about him. I'm gonna do my best though. Anyway, he was just talking about the fact that General Armstrong was this amazing human being and a great example, and everybody around him was inspired and all that sort of thing. So this concluding statement I just love, that he was a man who could not tolerate or could not endure for a minute hypocrisy or want of truth in anyone. This moral lesson he impressed upon everyone who came in contact with him. Integrity, right? And he also did humility, because he never was lording himself over anybody. It was great. So this is something that I think is key to the entire leadership discussions. We don't have apprenticeship and we don't have mentorship. And mentorship isn't, oh, let me just go find somebody and take them under my wing. It's let me go find somebody who's got the leadership talent and take them under my wing and then develop them. That's what we're missing. And we're also missing an ability to identify that in people, to identify the leadership talent. We're not doing any of that. We just send somebody to school, give them a piece of paper, say you're a leader. It's not working. It's not working. Okay. Next. This is just because I promised it. So this is the end of the chapter on associations. And so here's the problem. So at the end of each one of these chapters in this book, it has these discussion points. They're great, right? Some of them I'm not sure about, but what particulars are associates of greatest influence in creating leadership? Interview a friend who's a leader and secure an illustration of an associate who's influenced them. Asks about parents, asks about other things. What's an expectation? So these are all fascinating, right? Anybody out there that's trying to start up something, get a hold of this thing and ask the questions, because they make you think. And what gets me here, some of the examples they use about people becoming leaders, it's being competent. And that's the next chapter, actually, is called Awakening Moments. And all of the examples that he uses in here are moments where somebody decided to go become really good at a certain competency and what it was that inspired them, like the guy that invented Braille, Booker T. Washington wanting to learn how to read, some of these other things. But he doesn't give an awakening moment for leadership. So I just thought it was interesting, because this is where the definition that he offered at the very beginning, where it's leadership is people exacting influence over a group of people, sort of breaks down. Because yes, the influence is great because you're able to read, or you're able to make Braille, do a whole bunch of great stuff, but you're still not a people leader, still not leading people. But still a bunch of interesting and cool examples. All right, next. Okay, so this is now chapter 9, energy. And if you remember, when I was doing the Army leadership series, I got mad when they came out with leadership and it was LDR, and so instead of, they were missing a couple of E's and an A, and I said energy and audacity and enthusiasm were three things that should be there. So this is interesting, because remember the definition, leadership is somebody exerting special influence over a group. Here it says leadership arises out of energy, intelligence, and character. So intelligence, big 5 personality trait, energy, enthusiasm, right? Big 5 personality trait, and then character. What characteristics? And so this one goes on to talk about energies pushing and force and stuff and all that sort of thing. And then it talks about intelligence. Let me skip ahead to intelligence. Okay, I didn't lie. The truth changed. So there wasn't a thing in here on intelligence. There's a chapter on intelligence, which we'll talk about. But versatility. So remember when we were talking about the big 5 personality traits, how there was openness to experience, which means being able to change and be nimble and come up with new ideas and different concepts. So here we go, 85 years ago, versatility. Person's energy may be expressed equally well in several different directions. Some persons can do several things better than their fellows can. Versatility is a mark of distinction. And there are other characteristics that are listed in this thing, but they weren't in a nice table in this energy section. But it's a bunch of things that are very aligned or in common with what we've talked about for characteristics of leaders. The next thing is going to be... all right, let me pause again. Hey, look. Next chapter, intelligence. So, energy is not enough to guarantee leadership. Energy might go around in circles. True. It might fatally blunder. Energy, however, is used to solve problems as intelligence, and intelligence used in the solving of a group of problems as leadership. Notice how he keeps talking about the difference. He left out character, but we're going to talk about character later. But what's interesting? Realistically, energy might go around in circles unless you have a goal. And so a goal comes from what? Is it intelligence? I don't know. But what I find interesting here is observation and interrogation. If we go down, I'm just going to skip while we're doing this. I apologize, but it's a good indicator. Yep, so this is part of intelligence, vision, vigilance, right? So vision is breadth of knowledge. He who has a greater breadth of intellectual view than others is in a strategic position. Vision is the ability to see all sides of the question and to eliminate biases. It puts one at a distinct advantage, preventing them from falling into the traps and that short-sightedness, English, and narrow-mindedness often set for people. It leads to tolerance and to compromise when issues are evenly divided and resulting in action threatens destruction. It gives that breadth of mind which appeals by its sweep. So what do we talk about with vigilance, right? Remember, one of the examples that we used is not just paying attention to yourself and the team and the environment, but here's a problem. You take your 4 or 5 different solutions and make a plan or make an avatar of each one of those solutions and then run the game, run the solution. And then you're able to say, okay, here's the best one of those without bias because you're paying attention to all the things. And, resulting inaction threatens destruction. We've said this a million times. You've got 3 terrible decisions. Each one's 5% less bad, but they're all way in the bad category. But you got to choose. Well, you do it. So sometimes people say that vision is off in the distance. Vision is this. Yeah, vision is seeing that. But sometimes vision isn't even that far in the distance. Sometimes vision is, here's what I see this organization capable of. Here's the level of excellence I see this organization can do. Not we're going to go become gazillionaires and billions of dollars. Rather, here's the level of excellence that we can achieve. That's my vision. But I just love that this was listed like this because it's something that we've talked about. But again, not my idea. The ideas are there. This is just reinforcing something from 85 years ago. Okay, next subject. We're going to talk about character. So let me get to that section. Okay, I lied. So I skipped to the problem section under intelligence. And this is what I thought was the reason I did this. I had it as a side note and I missed it. So why are some persons more observing than others? Good question. In what concrete particulars is observation basic to leadership? Well, vigilance, right? But it's asking, why is observation important? Observation of all sorts of stuff. When does inquiry defeat leadership? When does it build leadership? How may intelligence hamper one's leadership? Is it sometimes wise to hold back? What conditions are most conducive to reflection? Because it talks in there about taking time to step back, step away from the chaos, go do some study, go pay attention to some things. Am I still paused? Oh, nope, I'm sorry. I have this little thing that shows whether or not I'm recording, and if I don't pull it back up, then I might be messing up. It's entirely possible. By what methods may vision be cultivated? Well, to me, it's mentorship. Anyway, I'm trying to answer these questions. Upon what does prevision, what relationship to vision is prevision? So a whole bunch of this is vision. but we're talking about intelligence. So I think it's fascinating because remember we said intelligence is one of the big 5 characteristic traits that I believe helps with leaders. And then some of these readings, obviously. Hello. So that was the end of part 1. And then obviously there'll be a part 2. I hope that I've picked a good place to cut this in half. And as always, I appreciate your time and patience. I hope that you find something interesting out of this whole process. So thanks for your time.